This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, play script, direct.
Welcome to the American Theater Wing Seminars on Working in the Theater. These are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, located on 42nd Street, the heart of the theater. We're here to discuss what it is to work in the theater. These are seminars based on a behind-the-scenes look as the performers, the playwrights, the directors, the costume designers, set designers, agents, discuss how to work in the theater, both on Broadway, off-Broadway, and regional theater as well. We also have a seminar on the unions and guilds discussing their role and how to work with and for the people that work in the theater. The American Theater Wing is known for its Tony Awards, but it is a year-round organization, and the Tony Award is given not for the longest run or the greatest box office or the biggest review at all times, but it's given in recognition of having achieved a degree of excellence in the craft of theater. And it was named in honor of a woman, Antoinette Perry, who was both a director, a producer, and an actress. And she believed very strongly in training for the theater. And so the Wings programs are based on that. We continue to talk development in theater and how to get quality in theater and how to bring theater to the community. And our programs stem from Saturday Theater for Children program, which goes into the elementary schools of New York City, and the children line up at a very early age to see a show, a live professional show on Saturday mornings. And then we jump to a new program called Introduction to Broadway, which, with the generosity of the producers and in cooperation with the board of the high schools of New York City, we bring students, but we don't bring them. The students ask to come, and they pay a minimum price for a Broadway ticket. And each youngster pays for that ticket. And they come on their own to see their first Broadway play. They've seen Phantom of the Opera and Les Mis and Conversations with My Father and practically every Broadway show. And then, through the wing, they meet with the cast and the stage managers and the people that are involved in the show afterwards to ask questions. So, again, what it is to work in the theater. And we hope that we're developing that audience for the future and also brightening the horizons of youngsters so that there is someplace beyond where they are. And these seminars are an outgrowth of the Wings program, a school that was run for returning veterans, in which they in turn learned about the craft of theater and took it to hospitals, high schools, and we're continuing to do the same thing today. The Wing, again, through its year-round programs, goes to hospitals and nursing homes and AIDS centers. And we also talk theater wherever we go. We believe in the theater. We believe that there is a magic and an intellect in the theater that nothing else can bring you. And so here we are on our seminar on the playwright and the director. and it is being chaired by Jean Dalrymple, who has done all of the things that Antoinette Perry talked about. She is has been an actress, she's a director, she's an author and a producer, and a member of the board of directors of the American Theatre Wing. And Brendan Gill is a longtime member of the famed New Yorker magazine, is a critic and brings his love of New York and the theater to us. And George White, who is president of the O'Neill Center and is an esteemed director both here and abroad. And they will in turn introduce the panel on playwright and directing. Thank you very much for being here.
This appears to be, as far as I know, largely an Italian and Irish gathering this morning, which is very pleasing. We have one missing member who is Irish, Terence McNally, who may show up at any moment. And then next to where Terence is going to be is Joanne Nici, a theatrical agent working with the firm of Don Buchwald and Associates, and keeping an eye on Wayne Cilento over there. And next to Joanne is Frank Pugliese, playwright of Aven'U Boys, that wonderful play, and currently artistic director of the Naked Angels Theatre Company. As his name implies, he is of Roman descent, probably of gladiatorial descent, and may well have been the descendant of that baby that Gene Simmons was carrying along the road when poor Kirk Douglas was being crucified. And then next to Frank is Geraldine Fitzgerald, striking an Irish blow. She and I speak mainly Gaelic, but this morning we'll be speaking English. And she's making her debut as lyricist and book writer with the musical Sharon. And she is going to be directing it as well. On my right is George White, as you have heard, who is, alas, only half Italian. George, speak up.
Thank you very much, Brendan. That was nice of you to say that. Anyway, on my right is my long-term partner in crime here at these seminars, and of course, Isabel introduced her much better than I could. I can only add that she was also one of the founders in 1939 of the American Theatre Wing. And for that, I personally am very, very grateful, and that is Jean Dalrymple.
Thank you, dear. Right next to me is the great choreographer, Mr. Cilento. Wayne Cilento. Wayne doesn't seem to go with Cilento.
My mother rebelled. My mother rebelled.
Oh. Anyway, his choreography has been seen in films, of course, and all the stage off-Broadway, on Broadway, and in the country, wherever. And his choreography for the current Tommy is terrific.
Thank you.
Wayne Cilento.
We have somebody else here.
No, I don't.
You're not here.
Oh, I do. I'm sorry. I beg your pardon.
Actually, with Terry McNally.
Yeah. It's Frederick Zollo. He's a well-known producer. He's had countless productions, all very good. The one he has now is called Aven'U Boys. I don't, it's, should I say Aven'U Boys or You Boys?
You Boys is all right.
It's all right. Avenue, yes.
Why don't we start with you saying what Aven'U Boys are? You, Fred?
Yes,
No,
I'm
looking at Frank only because he is genuinely
He said, oh, well, then...
an Avenue boy.
I
mean, you have the real thing here.
all right. But that since we were talking about you,
boy,
or Avenue,
It said the Avenue. That's the way people kind of said it in the neighborhood.
But it's a
Just
difficult
string
thing
it all
because it
together.
says one thing in print and another orally. It depends on how you see it. It's a kind of pun.
Yes.
But it works.
Yeah.
And it's a perfectly wonderful play. And one of the things that everybody always says traditionally is that plays are are not written but rewritten. You have accumulated in this play such a series of melodramas, all put together and all woven together. Now, in your case, was that a matter of beginning with workshops, or how did it all come about? Because it's very complex.
And is it autobiographical in many, many ways, based on?
It's autobiographical in the sense that it's people that I know and have, spent time with a long time ago. But I wrote the play about 8 years ago in college, and then proceeded to rework it, eventually having a workshop production of Naked Angels, where we spent a lot of time doing readings and stage readings, and then doing a workshop production where a lot came out of it. But it was always my intention to try to write 6 separate stories that sort of interwove into one, even from the beginning. Sort of a democratic process, I guess, the whole thing. But I wanted everyone to have an equal say.
Yeah, but and it works perfectly wonderfully well. But that's one of the hardest things to do. You do it in a novel comparatively easily, but it isn't easy to do on stage, and along with everything else. Mr. Zollo was receiving a lot of praise as a director, because your chief fame before, I believe, was as a producer.
Or in fame.
Whatever. But is this your first job in direction or not?
No, I made this mistake a few years ago. I directed a play called Talk Radio. Eric Bogosian wrote. But since Joe Pappas passed away, he was the only person who would employ me in that capacity. So.
How did you train for this, or didn't you train? Do you find your training as a producer helped you as a director, or did you? Is there something in your past, very dark
past,
that trained you to be a director?
Caused me to go down this rocky road. No, I actually went and got an MFA, and occasionally directed plays in graduate school as part of the.
What was graduate school?
It was at Brandeis, actually. And but it wasn't in directing, actually. It was oddly enough in playwriting, but we directed a lot of different plays. And prior to that time, I did a great deal of things with a number of people I grew up with, like Eric Bogosian. And we would direct plays all the time. But they were much more, in fact, it's very much like Frank's theater company, much more kind of ragged and rough-edged, and we didn't think about what we were doing very much. We just sort of did it, put people on stage and move them around as best we could, and usually to get them on and off so they wouldn't bump into the scenery and things like that. And so it was not a terribly scientific approach to directing. I mean, frankly, historically, at least prior to the early part of this century, there weren't any directors, as far as I know. There were a few actor managers who ran around, and there were producers. Velasco is one. In fact, if we were to look at a half dozen of the greatest American plays of this century, most of which were directed by people we could hardly name. Glass Menagerie was directed by its producer, Eddie Dowling. Our Town was directed by its producer, Jed Harris. I don't think any of us could identify who directed O'Neill's first triumph, Beyond the Horizon, but I would guess it probably was the producer or some drinking buddy of O'Neill.
I can tell you later.
You'll tell me later. Until the rise of that Russian thing over there, and Max Reinhardt in Germany, and people started talking about it a little bit more, but really until the auteurs came along, those guys like Kazan and stuff, there was not a lot of people who called themselves directors, or at least not proudly. People were able to do plays quite successfully without anybody in the way.
We had a discussion yesterday for part of our time among the actors about good directors and bad directors, and how you accommodate to a director who isn't necessarily sympathetic with your particular point of view, and how the actors felt about that. Now, did you begin very early on in this play, working immediately with Frank? Or when did you come together?
Frank and I have had a long process on this play, because we were going to do it somewhere else, and the theater went out of business. Which is an interesting experience when you're about to go into rehearsal, and it was the Los Angeles Theater Center.
First day of rehearsal.
The
first day of rehearsal that they went.
It's kind of like, I have good news and bad news.
How did you get to each other?
We were introduced to each other through a mutual friend, and I was looking for a director. It was after we did Naked Angels, and I was looking for a director to possibly move it somewhere. And LATC had some sort of grant from AT&T and was interested in doing with Aven'U Boys as one of these play of the '90s. What is it? New play. It's some kind of
New Place of the '90s.
Right.
It's that program with in league with the Kennedy Center and others.
Exactly.
AT&T and American Express do, and that's a program for new playwrights.
So we were going to do it at LATC, and I was looking for a director, and I met Fred, and out of all the people I met, Fred seemed to be the only one who was saying the right things. So we just started talking.
I said it was great and a work of art.
Who could argue with him? So I just went ahead and...
He's a genius.
Well, now, Geraldine, you're doing everything this time with your new musical, Sharon. But how many times have you directed? You've directed in the past.
Yes, I have, and I directed, the Hudson Guild once had a program for new directors, and I directed a couple of plays there. And the thing that I directed the most often was a play that I got through the mail about 15 years ago called Mass Appeal, about two priests. And that's really what started me off, because the author asked me to direct it, and the fact that I'd never done anything like that except for me working in the street, at the street theater, I said yes. And it went off very well, partly because I had two extraordinary actors, Milo O'Shea and Eric Roberts. And then we took it here and took it there, and different people did it. And so that was a kind of a series of lessons in itself, the many, many productions that I directed of that.
I wanted to ask Geraldine, because you did both the book and the lyrics, and directing it, and I imagine sweeping the stage and everything else.
That's right.
Do you find that you lose your objectivity as a director if you're directing your own material, or do you not? Or how do you put a wall there?
Well, I have a very kind of a low threshold of being bored. And so I make sure that that's not too long. I mean, that I'm sort of maniacally interested in its length and the lengths of the scenes, and not taking the audience beyond where they want to go when they're looking at it. And so hopefully...
We were talking before about Tommy, that in the first 5 minutes of Tommy, it's practically like War and Peace, because you start in 1940, you have the Second World War, you have all these things going on, death, resurrection, murder, and if you miss the first 5 minutes of Tommy, you've missed an enormous part of the whole thing. But that, I was asking whether that could be, as a choreographer, was he having to make use of a lot of computerization backstage, because I couldn't imagine how everything could be timed as brilliantly as that. But you say it's still a human problem.
It's definitely a human problem. The only computer that's happening is the back wall projections. Everything else is done physically with the staging of it, and it's the prologue, and it basically sets up the whole show. And if you miss that, you miss the fact that there was a relationship that went on in the 40s, and he went to war, and she thinks he got killed, and she got pregnant, and she had the baby. There's a lot of information going on, and then the play starts, and she gets the letter that he's lost in action. So, and it goes on from there. So it's an interesting process.
How do you start being a choreographer? I mean, that's we talked about becoming directors and all that, but choreography is a very, very special thing, and there are not many that are well known, but suddenly they seem to appear, and not that you have not had a long experience, but you suddenly appear. People like Susan Stroman suddenly appear after everybody's bemoaning the fact that there are no more choreographers, no more. How did you do that? Where did you come from?
I don't think I suddenly appeared. I've been
I know that, but I mean,
I started with commercials. I was in chorus line, and I guess
you call that commercial?
No, I was dancing in chorus line.
Oh.
And I guess because it was a very hot show at that time and very recognizable, I got called from Bob Giraldi, who was a big commercial director. And I got a lot of recognition because I was the only male soloist in the show, and I Can Do That, and I was a good dancer. And so he said to me, do you want to choreograph commercials? And I went, no, not really. But I thought I could make some money, and I got into it. And I started out choreographing doing that, and I did McDonald's and Dr. Pepper spots and all of that. And, and I had to come from a point of view where it wasn't just choreographing dancers and doing dance steps. I had to come from a directorial point of view from the moment I started. because I had to make dancers look like they were real people, and I had to make real people look like they can dance. So I went through a lot of years doing a lot of commercials, and then little things started happening, like off-Broadway projects and stuff, and I would toy around with that. And I always went back and forth into really just wanting to perform. And my career just progressed. And then when I got into dancing, when I did dancing after doing a couple of shows, I signed with William Morris, and William Morris automatically thought that I was going to be the next hot choreographer. And I thought, I don't want to choreograph. Now, you know, I got this Tony nomination for being a performer in a show, and I wanted to go to California and be a song and dance man and you know, do what Gene Kelly did. Wrong. So, and I was getting 5 and 6 scripts like a week to choreograph these things, and I was terrified. So I think I left the agency because I didn't want to choreograph. Little did I know, now I'm choreographer. But I think that's how it progressed. And then I did Baby. And Baby was about a real situation. It really wasn't about dancing and stuff. And it just kept going. And I worked with Bob Fosse and Michael Bennett, and I learned as I went along.
It's interesting in Tommy, again, we were talking about the fact that in musical comedies in the old days, the choreographer, there was a chorus line, there were 24 girls kicking in unison, that kind of thing. It was a fairly simple thing to have to do. And everything is so complicated in Tommy, but among other things, the props are such, with doors here, windows, and everything, all flying up and down, that every actor has to be choreographed.
Right.
One mistake could be absolutely catastrophic, and these are doors that open and don't open, and you look through and you see all that. So everything has to be your handiwork, or your footwork.
Yeah.
Where does the line come between director and choreographer?
Well, I think the fact that Des and I have, we are truly an amazing team, that we totally collaborate with each other. And I've never done a show where you count from the moment the show starts, from the prologue to the end of the show. I mean, there are so many counts of 8. We choreographers count in 8s. So every entrance, every exit, every door knob, every closing of the door is all choreographed. It's all interwoven with within the piece. So it's all choreographed and it's all staged. It's just, I don't know where the beginning and the end of it is. It's just interwoven into one piece.
And then when you take notes, watching, if something is wrong by 3 seconds, you'll have to worry about that or that going on. So you do pages of notes?
Yeah. I went last night just to have fun, and I took like around 10 pages of notes. They want me out of the theater now.
But you're going to run for years, so what will happen? You'll come back every few weeks or so to make sure that the timing is what it was before?
Yeah, like we were saying before, everything's individually choreographed. It's not like a chorus line. It's not like doing one production number and you stand in the front of the stage and you just kick your legs and everyone has to be perfectly together. There's 12 ensemble members in situations, and I've choreographed 12 different things for 12 different people. And every once in a while it'll come together and it'll make a statement, and then it'll disperse and go back into the scene. But it's a free-for-all, and if I'm not on top of it, it can turn into, well, you told me I could do this, and and it turned into this person doing this big extension and triple pirouettes and stuff, and I never gave you that, but I felt like doing that, So I have to stay on top of it a little bit.
But your play even is choreographed in that sense that you as a director, because you haven't got a moment to spare with the changing of scenes and everything going on, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and you're also working within time limits. Do you have a set amount of time that play must take, and does it vary from night to night?
It should be shorter. It always should be shorter.
Yeah.
What's the prescript to Mamet's play, Glengarry Glen Ross? Always be closing.
Yeah.
It always be shorter.
Yes.
This particular play should be. That's not to say that.
Almost
other
every
plays,
play should be shorter.
There are certain plays that. We were talking about Angels in America earlier. I frankly could sit and probably watch that play for 10 hours or 12 hours. There's something about the pace and rhythm of a play. The idea of Aven'U Boys is that it is you don't see the murder. So it's very much Rashomon, because you don't see the murder. If you haven't seen it, the play, in essence, opens with a murder, but it's not on stage. And so, really, the play kind of beats around a bush that you're not quite sure what exactly happened until the end of the play. And in a sense, the audience is desperate to know. But yet they forget, like all good audiences, because if you can hide what they're really interested in, and you get them interested in things they didn't think they were interested in, like sadomasochism, for example, which comes up a little bit in the play, you know, and so suddenly they're kind of interested in sadomasochism they didn't think they were when they came in the theater, and they've forgotten about this thing they're interested in, like who did it, or who done it. And so, like, you've got them over here for a moment, but if the pace slows, then they're starting to say, oh, well, you know, these people are weird. I don't want to hear them anymore. Like, I want to know what happened, you know. So, in a sense, it has to move with that sort of rhythm. There are moments that in Frank's writing, and Frank, like all, I think, great writers, designs moments within the play, like music, where it kind of goes into a little bit of a moment or a pause, and we're allowed to take a breath, and then it goes on. He's designed those moments. We just had to convince the actors to believe in them. And I'm not a very sympathetic director as directors go, because I don't view directing as psychoanalysis. It's like hit the mark, meet the point, read the line as written, and do it and get out of the way. You know, like,
Would you like to say that again?
hit the it's written, and this man spent 6 years writing this play. It comes from his guts. It comes from his life, you know, and like it is not like an improvisation. It isn't that. This is something that comes from deep within him, and it's written precisely. He's a very precise writer. He's like Mamet, very very much like Mamet, very much like Clifford Odets in a previous generation. These are very precise things. This is not like, oh, well, you know, I think I'll come down stage now. No. You don't want to do that. That's not what it is, you know. And so in that case, it really required, unfortunately, and in a sense, we exhausted our actors, and they're 6 extraordinary actors. But we exhausted them because we constantly, like when you go back, you know, as Mike Nichols puts it, to take out the improvements. The fact of the matter is that we have to keep doing, no, what are you doing? What are you doing? And they say, leave us alone. This is our time now, you know. No, it's not. It's Frank Pugliese's time.
Tell me, Frank, speaking of that, how many plays have you written before this one? You said you were 8 years ago in college.
Well, I wrote a couple of plays before I wrote this one, and then I've written like 3 or 4 plays after it, actually. But this is the first one that get an off-Broadway production. I've had other plays produced, you know, down at NYU and at Naked Angels, and up at Poughkeepsie.
And you have work on the stocks now. I assume you do.
Well, there's a play, I'm working on presently, rewriting.
Mark Twain was always terrified that he would run out, and so he used to like to keep 3 different books going, all to go from one to the other in case something awful should happen in one of them. And I would think that in a play with as full of emotion as your play is, that you would have to begin work on something else in order to keep your sanity.
I think it's the only way to finish what you're working on, because a lot of times you don't finish. It's like Cézanne's Doubt. You know, he never felt that any of his paintings were done, even you know, his last. And you just kind of don't feel they're done. And it's not until you pick up the next project do you actually take the time to go finish the one you've been working on. So it's very funny, because when I'm finishing a play, I'm always really actually thinking about the next one.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great thing.
Mercy.
Yeah.
As a playwright, did you, as you were writing the play and as it developed, did you see all the things that Fred saw in it, the stops, the where you were going with it? Was that Fred's description of the play? Was that what you saw when you were working, or was that something that was brought out by the director?
Well, when I wrote it, I was conscious of its structure, and and of the metaphors I was trying to use. I mean, the play is a lot about violence and inarticulism and how people use violence to try to emote and try to get across what they're feeling. So I picked a particular style to the play, which is very short scenes that kind of jab back and forth between each other. And I also there's a lot of it is. The movements are really important. The games they play are all about violence and movement, and they're saying a lot more sometimes than what they actually say. So I had to map the play out very, specifically from the beginning, to the point where I said a movement and a line can't be there if it doesn't serve a purpose. I mean, that was kind of the rule I used as I was going along. You know, and that's how it came about.
Did you study playwriting in college?
I studied playwriting, the last couple of years of college. I actually studied Paula Vogel. And then I went to NYU for grad school, because Paula was teaching up at Cornell. And then I went down to NYU for grad school, and I had some great teachers there, Tina Howe, and actually people like Lorenzo Semple and Lawrence Marcus, who really taught me a lot about structure as well.
Lorenzo Semple is also one of the funniest people in the whole world.
He's the greatest.
Yeah, marvelous man. He's a screenwriter, but he's famous screenwriting. But
at one time he had 3 plays, I think, on Broadway.
And he's the nephew of our great playwright Philip Barry.
That's right.
But he himself is really a funny man. There aren't many of them.
Were you involved in the casting of it?
Yeah, very much so.
And Fred,
Well,
do you usually?
it was a never-ending casting process.
The casting was
We're still casting this play, actually.
Tell me
Are
about
you
Never.
interested, by the way?
Oh, I love it. That's the last thing I want to do.
I feel Brooklyn in you.
Joanne?
Yeah,
Joanne, you and Terrence have been fairly silent so far. So I wanted to turn
I'm going to know. You didn't leave.
He's my
you weren't at the
silent
William
partner.
Morris office when Wayne left the William Morris office.
No, I was not at the William Morris.
Oh, okay.
But I was wondering, how is it that you and Wayne work together? What do you do, for example? The show is open. It's a tremendous hit. It's going to run for a couple of years. So now, what has been your role and what is your role?
I am his lifeline.
In a word.
I am his lifeline. Tommy's been a part of our lives for more than a year, well over a year, since before it premiered in California.
What is, when you say our lives, what is it?
I'm talking about Wayne and myself, myself as his representative. And it's interesting because I always hear his point of view, and of course I'm talking to producers and management. So you view those situations and try to solve the problems that they have together. But you also participate in the long run. As you say, Tommy is open now, and it's a big success. And hopefully it will run for many, many years and have many, many touring companies. But it doesn't stop there, because Wayne's participation in Tommy doesn't stop as one of the creators. At this point, he's still going to the theater at night and giving them 10 pages of notes. And I get a regular report from Wayne, an hourly report from Wayne, about the ups and downs of what's happening at Tommy, and certainly what the next step is going to be for him, in terms of his work and his career and what we should do next. But it's an interesting point of view, because I am not only hearing all day long about Tommy, but from every other client with every other show, not to mention film and television, that they're involved in. And it's a perspective that no one else gets from sitting in the agent seat, because you are the ultimate middleman, but in the best sense of the word, because what you're doing is trying to represent your client in the best possible way, but also presenting to him or her the other points of view.
And you represent actors?
Mainly actors, actually. Wayne is the only choreographer that I take full responsibility
and he makes more trouble than anybody else?
Much more trouble. But obviously, when you have a client involved in a show like Tommy, when it gets to the point, I said to Wayne very recently, just before it opened, I feel like I've been pregnant for 18 months, and this baby is long overdue. We were pulling our hair out finally, because there was nothing left to do now but open the show. Right. Everything else had been done, and we did go over every possibility, contract-wise and other things, so that by the time it opened, it became the focus of both of our lives. Him, obviously, and for me, it became a priority. Whereas, in the case of other clients, when they're involved in shows that come down to, the final opening or the first shoot day, it becomes a priority for you.
What got you into being an agent? What is your background, and how did you?
Well, people are forced to be agents. I didn't know if you knew this. They don't choose it. It's like a lottery, and I drew a really low number. I don't know how it happened. It's a blur, and I've been an agent since the late 70s. But I think I'm the first generation of agents who never were anything before, that really started working at agencies. And I know that some of the wonderful people that I trained with and learned from, some of who are now gone, were stage managers or actors or performed other jobs in the theater, and that was not unusual. And I think that agents came into being much as, like Fred was talking about, directors. and how it has now, it's become an art form where a playwright can choose a director cold from a pool of talent. And it doesn't have to be somebody that was there or someone who necessarily wrote it or was involved. And I think that agents have become a real force in the American theater. And unfortunately, to most of the general public, and even to some in the theater, they're viewed as the butt of only actor jokes and so forth. But there is so much involved, and I think that if you have a good relationship with your agent, and you choose somebody who cares about you, who is enthusiastic about your work, who's interested in your career in the long term. And if you find that person, and you happen to get along together well, which is a part of it, because it's not like hiring an accountant. You know, you're going to talk to this person, you're going to live in each other's pockets every day.
What was the name of the agency that you started with?
I started with Agency for the Performing Arts. And my first job there was working for Bruce Savan, who I think was one of the premier agents.
Wayne was just as good 4 or 5 years ago. What were you doing with him then?
Wayne and I have not been working together for that long.
What does an agent then do? Well, suppose he was your client 4 or 5 years ago, and there wasn't Tommy, the great big success of today. What does an agent do for his client?
Well, first of all, you do solicit work. And that is actually more a part of an agent's role in terms of actors. Directors, choreographers, certainly writers, are not their work is not solicited for them in the same way. And a lot of their work comes to them from people that they have worked with before and people that they know. But certainly there are, you have access to producers or projects and possibilities for your client that maybe he would not know otherwise. But I think in terms of choreographers particularly, for instance, Tommy came along to Wayne because of an association with the director, that he sought out Wayne and wanted him very particularly for that role. And so my role with that began with sorting out Wayne's participation, guarantees, and protection in terms of agreements. But I don't know what would have happened 4 or 5 years ago. Hopefully, 4 or 5 years ago, he would have been back on Broadway, and we wouldn't have to wait till 1993 to see his work again.
Geraldine?
Let me ask Geraldine.
Yes.
Tell us about your what you're going to do, because I think it's fascinating for a woman like you, an actress and a singer and everything else, to suddenly take this kind of a job. So tell us about how it happened and what you think about it.
Well, there's an Irish play called Sharon's Grave. It's very, very popular in Ireland. It plays every year. It's very strange, kind of what you might sort of Irish Gothic sort of work. And I had seen it in Dublin, and I'd seen it then when I was traveling around Ireland making some film in faraway places like Ballybunion in County Kerry, where it had a all-Kerry cast. And I got more and more kind of, you'd have to call it a falling in love with the play, and falling in love with the author, and falling in love with every little thing that I noticed when I went to see it. That I got the ambition, the wish to show it here in America. I thought that Americans would like it very much, especially Irish Americans would relate to it very strongly. It's a love story between a man who's a thatcher, who's traveling around Ireland, and a young woman who has to run a farm by herself and has a brother who is kind of off the wall on one hand, on the other hand, a person of extraordinary ability to love and understand. And then there is a very, very wicked person, no other word will do in it, who also wants the girl and will stop at nothing, which includes murder, to get it. So it's very strong dramatic work that has a lot of humor in it and a lot of color and a lot of unusual customs, like the wake. The wake in Ireland is an extraordinary thing. Some much-loved citizen will die, and half an hour later, even if it's in the middle of the night, everybody will have gathered together, not really to pray, but to celebrate the dead person with drinking, singing, laughing, embracing, and so it's full of things like that, which
When was the play written?
The play was written in the mid-30s. And it's been going ever
but you
since.
decided to make it a musical.
Yes, I did, because it seemed like that would be a very good way to show it here. And then also, it had a kind of a music in all these powerful emotions, all of its own, before anybody says more than a word. So I thought then to augment that with tunes and songs and everything would be an advantage. I hope I'm right. It's a wonderful. The source work is wonderful. I hope I haven't spoiled it.
It's just like the Irish to make a popular play called Grave.
Yeah, that
Sharon's
is like us.
Grave. Oh, I like it already.
Yeah, right. Well, that's.
What is about a wake? Oh, better still.
Well, Brendan, you're right. You see, because it is about
the
death.
Irish disposition.
Yes.
Well, I hope you're right about Irish Americans, of whom I am one.
Yes.
Because by and large, there are 35 million of us, and we never go to the theater. The Irish Americans don't go to the theater. I don't
Sorry
know
to
what
hear
they
you
do.
saying that.
I know. Well, you know perfectly well. It's very hard to do any Irish plays in New York City. We have 2 million Irish people.
Yes, I do.
What do they do with themselves? Nobody knows.
Well,
I do.
Picking up on this Celtic background, Geraldine, is this accepting the fact that at base all Irish are poets, basically, down deep?
Yeah.
Is this your first go-round at lyrics?
Yes.
And
that happened by mistake. I'm sure I lived to regret it. There was nobody to write the lyrics. Bill C. Davis, who wrote the original book that we have to go with, and who's a wonderful writer, very economical and everything, for some reason didn't like writing the lyrics very much. And so then we didn't have a lyric writer, so the composer was raring to go to compose glorious music, which it really is. So he said, Geraldine, write a lyric. Do come. And I foolishly said yes, because then he became an absolute tyrant. And I would bring him something and say, here's a lyric, and he'd say, wait a bit, we have to match up here, and the music here, you can't do that over here, you've got to do something else. And as I say, just months of slavery came in when I said, do it again. So finally, when they were making up the poster on the program, they said that I'd written the lyrics, which I guess you can call it.
Tell us when the play is opening.
How many lyrics are there?
There's quite a lot. It's about 16, maybe too many.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we'll probably have to take out the ones I like.
Are you able to cut it, Geraldine?
Yes, I am. I
You can
feel
look at
very
it.
strongly that it works.
Yes,
Shouldn't be
that's
too long.
fine.
Yes. So I can do that.
But tell us when the play is opening.
It's opening on the 4th at the 91st Street Theatre, which is a theatre also called the Intar. And over and above Sharon, because we took out the Sharon's Grave part, we just call it Sharon now. It's the most beautiful theatre, which in some extraordinary architectural way seems to have the seats kind of joined to the set. I mean, you feel that you could slide down the seats and land up on the stage. It's extraordinary kind of an illusion.
Yes, it's a very nice little theatre.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
Very
that's
nice.
a good thing.
Yeah.
And you have how many in the cast? Is it a big musical?
Yes,
or?
it is. There's about, I should think, about 14 people.
Oh, that's a lot of people.
Nowadays, a lot,
No.
yes.
Did you use an agent to cast? Did you use a casting agent? Or
Well,
did
no.
you...
Well, what we used mainly was the kindness of the Irish Arts Centre, who kept sending wonderful Irish actors over to us. They were very helpful. They're a marvelous group. Very good.
Fred, you've used what is considered non-commercial theater, quote unquote, and yet they've turned into commercial successes. Is that your goal? You've taken chances as a producer with even in the movies that you did, in the Mississippi Burning. Did you look at something and say, I want to do this because artistically and it makes a statement and I don't care whether it's a commercial success or not? Or did you say, I can turn this in to a commercial success? How do you... I don't need all of your secrets or all of your thinking, but a bit of it.
I don't know what commercial means. I think the first mistake people make is to try to think they know what it means. I mean, is a rock opera that's almost 20 years, 25 years old?
Yeah.
You know, was made into a perfectly dreadful movie by a famous director, but almost unwatchable movie.
Right.
I don't know if anyone's seen the movie of Tommy, but
Yes, it's
go see the movie of
terrible.
Tommy, or rent the video cassette if it's even on video cassette, and then go see what Wayne and Des and everyone has done, half Roth over there, and it's just the most amazing, brilliant thing. And so if someone said to me, what about Tommy? People say, oh, God, well, it's old, it's old-fashioned. Does anyone listen to it anymore? That audience is 40 years old now. They're not going to go. They don't go anyway. The kids don't like The Who. And the movie, did you see the movie? No one even, the movie closed before it opened. So what are you talking about? We're going to spend $6 zillion on? Who knows? You don't know. You do not know. And the basic way to do it is to actually believe in it. And if you're the only person, you say, I'm the only person to go see Tommy. If I'm the one person who actually sits in the audience for the first 6 weeks or whatever long it takes us to close if it's a flop, then that's fine by me, at least if we've done something that's special. I mean, to me, when I produce plays, they're just plays that sort of interest me. They're plays that say something, they're plays that have a peculiar and unique language unto themselves. And sometimes plays that are about things, since I don't think we have much. I mean, unfortunately, we've narrowed in the old days when people did plays all the time, when 70 years ago or whenever, when 100 plays and 200 plays were done a season and 100 musicals were done. I mean, we actually had a time in this country. In 1927, there were 350 Broadway productions, of which approximately 250 were what are now called straight plays. I don't quite know what that, as opposed to gay plays.
So you're going to have to change that.
Although I've always wondered that. If they're gays, does that make us glums? I've always wondered where the terminology comes from. But in any case, the fact is that there were 250 plays. Plays. I mean, can you imagine what riches were there and what terrors
I was going to say
awaited?
not riches.
Some riches, some terrors, but the fact is plays were done all the time and all the time and all the time, and there was this constant expression.
Economically, it was a different time.
I don't know. It was, of course, to me, there's always been this connection between success on Broadway financially and what Wall Street's doing. And Wall Street's booming now. There seems to be a little more money available for Broadway. In the late 20s, as we all know, there was plenty of money available to throw around. But the fact of the matter is that people just went out and did them. And the problem is that we have so few producers, sadly, left.
Right.
The American Theater Wing is one of the rare and few places where actually people can learn a little bit about producing. But since most people want to be movie producers or television producers, the few
Instant directors.
Or director, of course, movie directors, which everybody wants to be. The fact of the matter is we have no producers, and nothing gets produced. And we desperately need people to say, this is a wonderful Irish play, and I see a musical here, and I want to go out and do that.
Well,
Wayne, who did the financing for Tommy? Do you know anything about how it got financed? It must be a very expensive show.
Actually, I really don't.
Because you can have the conviction that you want to put on the play, but when it's something like Tommy, you've also got to raise millions of dollars. Now, how
he has the best producer team on earth right now, other than Cameron McIntosh, who exists in his own orbit somewhere out there. But he has the Dodgers, Michael David and
Pace
Strong and
Productions.
Rocco Landisman. That's great.
When you say there are no producers around today,
There were very few, but he happens to.
look at the 7 or 8 producers come up on the Tony Awards show to get an award and the billing on the top of it.
I see what you're
and
saying.
that's the economic
Right.
value that we have to go back to. That's one of the reasons why the plays aren't being produced.
Well, if I may, Isabel, too, and pick up on what you said that, too, and we know, and Gene will remember this, too, when we say producers, and I think, Fred, this is where you're coming from, too, a little bit, there are money people who put money in and are associated, but then there's the old line producers that we knew about,
Right.
the Kermit Bloomgardens, the Herman Shumlins, the people that really were more than backers,
Right.
but were people who shaped and were as involved almost as the directors were in creating a work for the theater. That's a very new thing. Now there's a lot of people who've made a lot of money, and they're on Wall Street, and will parlay that over to
There's always been that what is the American idea? It's an idea in capital. And there always been the guy who wanted his Corrine girlfriend to be in the show, and so he put.
Yeah.
That always happened. But the fact of the matter is that there were guys of great imagination incredible courage, who went out there and cut a swath. And there are a few. I mean, Cameron McIntosh is an obvious example, but someone like Rocco Landesman.
You're doing it, so there.
Well, Rocco Landesman said, "I think we should do Huck Finn as a musical. I think Roger Miller's the guy to write them." I mean, that Rocco went out and cut those trees down and created that the setting that creates something great, you know. And clearly, these guys all got together and said, "I think we can put Tommy on stage." I mean, Tommy's been around a long time. We all know about it. I mean, like, why don't we say, Tommy, why not? You know? The fact is, these guys went out there and did it with Pete Townsend and did it.
But Tommy's been tried before on stage. Had a very unsuccessful production in London that flopped, as well as the movie, which was a big mistake. But I think that the economic climate in this country is obviously a factor. But I think also our entertainment focus has changed radically in the last 35 years. I didn't grow up going to the theater. You know, I think I'm an aberration in terms of my generation and my family.
Well, we've been trained out of the theater-going habit.
You've lost one generation of
Absolutely. You didn't have television in the 1920s, and you certainly didn't have cable, and you didn't have video. And all of this entertainment at home, and we were talking about this earlier, in the comfort of your home, with your beer and your chips, is there at your fingertips. And you can watch all those movies or screen all those movies and not even look at them, that you were reviewed last season that you thought you might take a look at. I think that theater is an expensive investment, not only for the producer, but for the theater goer, to go out for an evening. Tickets for Tommy's are $65. Just for a pair of tickets, that's $130.
As a producer, can you get a ticket price lower?
No. In fact, $65 for Tommy's a bargain.
No, well, let's say that it is. Let's not talk about that. But why does
I don't mean that theoretically. No. I mean it based on what it costs.
Why is a ticket price what it is? Why is a ticket price?
The classical equation has always been, the classic equation has always been that a ticket to a Broadway show has been about the same as a meal in a good restaurant. And frankly, a lot of us will go tonight to some lousy restaurant and drink a lousy bottle of wine and sign that check without hesitation. But yet we'll go to see Tommy and we'll stand in line and say, we'll grumble about the ticket price. And the fact of the matter is it's always been about the same. It's sad that it costs $100 to
I want to know why. I want to know why it costs that. Because in no other business, let's take a book publishing, for example. I go back to that all the time because it has the same elements in it. You have manufacture and you have art and you have design.
It has gone up identically.
It has, but not every book is exactly the same. Whether it's a small, yes, but not every book is the same.
Novels used to be $2.50. $2.50 is what you paid for a novel. Now $25, so it's 10
But
for
not
one.
every novel is $25, whether it's a big book or a small
Paperbacks
book.
are $6.95.
I'm
sorry, that's outrageous.
No, I'll say there is something, and pick up on what Isabel is saying, too. There was one of these seminars a couple of years ago when I asked, after the seminar, what a set for a particular musical was. And this is where I think sometimes the theater, I sort of fall between this discussion, is a little bit in Never Never Land. I was told that the set, Blythley was told this, that the set cost $640,000. And I stopped short and I thought, my Lord, do you know how many houses you can build for $640,000? So there is a certain Never Never Land in the theater here that does not relate always to the real world. I mean, this is, you could build 3 magnificent houses in suburbia for $640,000.
No, you can't.
Well, you can make 1, 2.
All right, let's get back to Frank.
It's simply true that you can't build a house for $650,000.
What did you want to say, Frank?
I think the real loss there is when Fred was talking about the 250 straight plays that have disappeared. I mean, any way you analyze it, you can analyze the ticket price any way you like, but I don't think as a group you're going to find a way to bring that price down. It does exist. And because of it, you have knocked out a certain amount of productions, the smaller plays and the plays that are just struggling to get up there. Now, I mean, maybe you support institutional theater more to try to get more of those straight plays up there, but and I think you underestimate the audience a little bit if you think that they're just prefer to sit home and watch TV. There's nothing like that live experience of going to the theater. And I think that can happen with a great word on a blank stage as much as it can happen with a $600,000 set. It's just a play. It's just trying to support those stages somehow, even if they're with. If we do exist in a place where the producers can't do what they wanted to do because of economics and because of support, then find another way to get those stages up and another way to get those plays up.
When I talk about Naked Angels in that respect, now, you have a low rent place to do your performing, right?
Low rent, but still low rent as in regard to the kind of things we're discussing here, yes, but high rent for us. I mean, we're a year behind in our rent in any regard. I mean, we're desperately in debt.
And a wonderfully worthy thing, and your sets are minimal. You're making every effort to put everything on as cheaply as possible.
We concentrate on the play. If it's a great play or a play we really believe in, we put it up. You know, no matter, even if it means 4 chairs and 2 lights, just get it up there and our audience is very, very loyal, and they come to everything because they want to see the work. They want to sit there and have that experience.
Joan
Where
Copeland,
do you get your audience from?
They've just built over the years. I mean, now we have a very good mailing list, and people just keep coming, and they enjoy coming. You know.
Joan Copeland was speaking yesterday at the wonderful play that she's in, Another Time, downtown at the Jewish Theater. And it ought to be moved. It ought to run for a couple of years here in New York. But to move it to another theater would be perfect, for example, the Nici Newhouse Theater at Lincoln Center. She said she had heard it would cost $500,000 to move that play. Part of it is even the advertising that they would have to do in order to tell people that the play had been moved. And she said she'd heard that was $250,000. The sums are staggering, but there's nothing to be done. You can't nickel and dime them down. That's just the fact of life.
The advertising budget is a large chunk of what it costs to make a play run. The wonderful new play by Lanford Wilson, Redwood Curtain, will close on Sunday. After a rave review in the New York Times, simply because people don't know it's there, and it can't find its audience. It doesn't have the advertising revenue to do a television commercial. There have been a couple of half pages in the Times, but it hasn't done the trick.
You don't have enough time for word of mouth to get around.
Exactly.
You don't have enough time.
And that's the important thing, I think.
I also think it can't compete with theater goers who might come into Manhattan for a day and tend to want to see a musical. And it's having to compete with the long-running musicals like Phantom and Les Mis. And a straight play with only 3 cast members, is a $47.50 ticket.
That's what I was asking before.
Well,
we're going to get back to playwriting and directing at some point on this, but we always come into the price of a ticket and why we're not going to the theater, which is, very important and has to do with playwriting and directing. We're going to take a break right now and have questions ready for this wonderful panel. And don't go far away, and stretch, and we're going to start right again on it. Today's panel is on the playwright and the director, and we're talking about their importance to each other and the work with each other. And within that comes the choreographer as well, and how the choreographer works with the director and the playwright. And so we're going to pick this up now where we started. I think, George, you were talking about directing.
Yeah, I mentioned to Fred earlier a little bit about how one gets started nowadays as a director. And I know, Fred, you mentioned that you were at Brandeis and you were really studying playwriting, which deals, of course, again with script analysis. I'm going to hold that for a minute because I also want to go over to Geraldine, who really, I've got to tell this story. When Laurence Olivier was praised for Wuthering Heights, he said, "Oh, that wasn't any good. The only good thing in it was Geraldine Fitzgerald as Isabel."
Thank you, George. Thank you very much. That was the proudest moment of my life when I heard that. But he said that.
And you certainly are an actress of great stature. When did you start directing, and what brought you to that, and how do you function we've talked to you about being a lyricist, but as a director, and apart from your low threshold of boredom, how do you approach it? Is your having been an actress must indeed give you a kind of sympathy, but does it give you too much sympathy for the performers?
I don't think so, no. I have tremendous empathy with them, too. I love actors, over and above sitting in an audience and watching my fellow thespians. And I never thought I'd use that word in my life. So really, it springs out of my wish to do anything I can to help them and make them feel easy up there, and make them feel that they're going to be able to express it the way that they want to, or that if there's another way that I would like them to do it, that I can convince them that they would like that. I myself had the incredible good fortune of working with Orson Welles and with Max Reinhardt, and I'll never forget the experience. Max Reinhardt thought that actors were really the most wonderful people on earth. He said that they're so brave and so this and so that, and when he wanted to give a direction on the stage, even though he was in his late 70s, he'd get up onto the stage, climb up, and then he would put his arms around the actor he wished to speak to, and then he would sort of croon into his ear what he wanted the actor to do, because he thought that they were so vulnerable up there. So he did everything he could to make them feel good. And one day he said to one of the actors, "Now, I want you to stand at this moment. I want you to stand like a king." And as a young actor, said, "Well, Professor Reinhardt, I'm afraid I can't do that because I'm an American." He said, "I don't know anything about kings." And Max Reinhardt said, "But you know the way children of 7 stand, don't you?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, that's like a king. And you know the way a baby puts out its hand if you have something that intrigues it. So that's like a king. They have things put into their hands." So he said, "Those are the only 2 things you have to think about." So he was extraordinary, and Orson Welles is another extraordinary director who was always having amazing effects. Orson was able to put into concrete terms an imaginary idea. Like, he thought that King Lear was about the proverb, if in politics, if you don't do the right thing, then and create a vacuum, then into that vacuum steps the spiv. And that's what he thought he wanted to do the play about. So the opening scene was the court scene that everybody knows, with the king behaving badly and tearing up the map and all that, and then suddenly the stage is empty. And then onto this empty stage with quite dim lights, up at the very back, up against the theater wall, there appeared the handsomest young man anybody ever saw, who walked, you probably saw that, who very slowly and deliberately walked right down to the edge of the stage and said, "Thou, nature, art my goddess." And instantly you knew you'd seen the spiv. And the play then began. And he could do that again and again. It was an astounding gift.
Tell the story about him in The Blinding of Gloucester when he was depressed.
Oh, yes. Well, you know, when actors have been rehearsing for hours, it isn't going right, and then this and so on, and we really don't know what to do with ourselves. And whenever the Mercury Company, that was Orson's company, ran out of steam in the afternoon, he had got a wonderful production of The Blinding of Gloucester. It would chill your blood. I mean, you saw his eyes out. My God, it was just appalling. But it was marvelously done. So he would say, "Come on, let's do The Blinding of Gloucester."
Well, in essence, then, you have, by being an actress, but you've also learned at the knee or at the feet of, in the best sense, apprenticed at some of the greats, which was a way to do it.
Incredibly fortunate.
And Fred, you're of course, come out of a different background then.
I wonder which of those methods do you use? Do you put your arms around?
No. Actors have changed since those days.
Well, I wonder if they have, though. Have they? I do still think that being an actor is a very vulnerable...
Oh, absolutely. It's an incredibly courageous thing to do. And in our play, the 6 actors in our play have unbelievable courage, because they're dealing with issues that in all honesty, many of us would prefer not to hear about. I mean, we didn't want to talk about racism in America until the day of the riots in Los Angeles, and then suddenly, in fact, Bill Bradley made an evocative and powerful speech a few weeks before, and he said, "This is the great issue of our times, and we must face it." And everybody said, "What's he talking about that?" People literally said, "Why is Bill Bradley talking about that?" I mean, we know racism is bad. Get out of here, And then a great American city virtually burns to the ground. And the problem is, these actors have to face that every night. They have to look, particularly Cynthia Martell's, who is, our black actress in the play who has to play it and hear those taunts for real every night. I mean, to hear the word nigger every night, and nigger is actually the nicest of the words that these guys come up with to call black people. I mean, and every night she has to look into this horror every night. I mean, and of course it's a play, of course, you know, these are actors and they're, but I mean, to walk onto that stage every night and know what's coming. It's one thing if you walk into a room and someone walks up to you and smiles and then slaps you, you know, you may still feel the pain, but it's a little easier. But if you know you're going to walk into a room and someone's going to come up and you see the person coming and you say, oh, no, no, Isabel, don't hit me, please, and whack, she hits you, you know. Walking in that room every night just isn't very pleasurable. And it's a
well,
tough
how do you,
situation.
then you say, but you're coming from a different perspective.
Well, I've been very blessed to produce plays with great directors. And I've observed, I think, some of the really amazing directors of my life. I mean, someone like Mike Nichols, who I've had the honor of doing a few plays with. I mean, just to, I've been able to sit and observe a variety of truly great directors, and I found in my experience observing these guys that they find a way to do it seamlessly, that they don't get in the way of the process, that they don't push an actor, that they don't even, in most cases, they'll attempt to make a suggestion that will seem to come out of the actor's own intuition. That will take an intuition of an actor, gee, maybe I should move now, Mike. And Mike will say, well, that's a good, but where do you think, you know, in other words, like, it's very collaborative in that respect, that he's very much from the time, from the other time, the time we're talking about, the time of when directors were like, oh, gee, you know, Frank, you direct this play. You'll be the, you know what I mean? That it was not like the director walking in. It wasn't this grandiose image. It was like, let's help the play get through. And even these whether it's Trevor Nunn or it's Mike or these guys actually assist the play and serve the play.
Would that be your definition of a great
I
Absolutely.
think it's a very good definition of
Absolutely.
a director.
That is our job in a nutshell. The problem with a new play is that you tend to get in there and tinker a lot, and we have to be very careful about that, because with Frank's play I began to have second doubt. I kept doubting myself. I said, oh, and when they did it at Naked Angels it was so funny, and now it's so serious, and there's a couple of really funny scenes that we've kind of pulled out of the play that maybe foolishly we should have put them back, and like, this is not, ooh, people are going to go home and kill themselves, or worse yet, you know, kill their wives. But, you know, so you have doubts.
I think you point out a certain, there's a bravery and a courage you need when you work on a new play, and maybe all plays, but in my experience, my limited experience with a lot of first-time directors, and this points up something about Orson Welles in the blinding scene. It's like, it's good when you do it at the end of the day to cheer you up for the next day, but I've been in situations with young directors working on plays where they'll pick that one scene that works, and that's what we'll rehearse for 4 weeks. You know, because there's a lack of, you know it works, you feel good, it makes you feel good, but there's a lack of bravery and to leap into the scenes that don't work, you know, which is always a trap, I think. You know. But that's, and in Aven'U Boys, that was like every day. You had to say, okay, we know the stuff that's funny, we know the stuff that's romantic, we've got to work on the stuff.
It's tough.
That's tough.
Look into the darkness. There's an actor named Ron Eldard in this play who's quite brilliant, and he has to do things that I don't think in his own life he ever thought about. I mean, going to the docks and being flogged by a transvestite. I mean, that's not, it may be something that enters most of our lives all the time, but this is a guy, I don't know Ronnie all that well.
This is
but
the
it's
finest
not
form of acting, though. You have fine actors.
To go to that place every night. I mean, this is not...
And you function also as a psychiatrist and...
Sadly,
counselor.
no. I'm not very good at that. I think the entrance of Freud into the theater is one of the more destructive things. I also happen to think the Actors Studio has been a very destructive force. But that's my opinion.
Why?
I think that there are great actors who can withstand any bad training, and who can rise with great training. But when a lot of other people decide that they want that too. They want to be like Marlon Brando. Well, sadly, it's not easy to be like Marlon Brando. It's not easy to be like Al Pacino or Robert De Niro or Chris Walken or the great actors who emerged from that tradition. But there comes this. American acting has become this kind of grungy, crawling, snide, phony ethnic, crabby kind of thing.
Keep talking. Keep talking.
It's all of this kind of it's all this kind of stuff. I mean, we don't have kings in America anymore. We have clowns.
Yes, we do.
A nice, charming group of people.
Children of 7 we have.
And I think.
Are you? Is the Angels producing company in the sense anything like the Clifford Odets group that's
Yeah, there's a lot of fighting.
Because you seem to be focusing in on the same kind of thing, the group theater, and on issues in your in what you've done.
Well, it's true. We like to concentrate on social issues. We like to support new plays and new actors and directors. So in that regard, it is very similar. You know.
How long have you been around?
We've been around for about 6 years.
How many productions have you?
Oh, I don't know. We do about 4 to 6 a year, and then an equal amount of workshops. You know, sort of readings and smaller productions.
Where did you get your name from?
Excuse me, Greg. How many plays have come out of this?
Well, Substance of Fire started there. Mackinac started there. Aven'U Boys started there. There's a play Chelsea Walls that was there. I mean, there's been a lot of plays that have sort of like kind of been born there. Actually, Evan Handler's play that's up at Second Stage now is a one-man show. Kind of started at Naked Angels, had its first run there. We have a series called Tuesday Night at Nines, which is welcome to anyone who comes in and they sort of read works that they're working on, pieces of plays or monologues, and it's open to everyone, and it's surprising what's come out of that. Our last play came out of that. A couple of one-man shows, including Evan's shows, come out of that. You know, it's just a place to plant a seed and see what happens.
What are the qualifications for a playwright to be part of the group?
Well, I painted and swept for about 2 years before I became a member. So, and then I just had to show them what I was up to. Mm-hmm. But it's a collective at first, and then there are playwrights and directors.
Where did the name come from? I was just curious.
It's a book about the beatniks. Mm-hmm. It's Kenneth Tynan's book about the beatniks.
Mm-hmm.
George, in your directing course at Yale, how do you teach directing? What are you talking about? Do you get what Fred says out of it? Can you get that out of your students?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that I sort of we fall between the two of what Geraldine is saying and a great deal now of dealing with new plays and a certain amount of script analysis and how you deal into that. Yale had the long tradition of the Alexander Dean approach where you kept the templates and everybody moved around and you knew exactly where you're going. But I think now the evolution of directing has come into script analysis and trying to really assist the process of the play development. I think the one thing that's got to be very much eschewed, and that is the cult of the director, which I think has grown in certain areas.
Well, the movie business has
done that a lot, and so we try to get away from that.
Which is a tragedy, but
Absolutely.
It's done that.
Yeah.
I mean, someone like Kazan and like Wells, who went from the theater and then went into movies and became the cult figures.
That's right.
And the fact that movie directors are overwhelmingly powerful, and stage directors are reasonably powerless. They can't change a word of the text, for example.
That's right.
The movie directors
Although
can
some
throw writers out.
fooled around. You're right.
But the myth seems to make some actors very lazy, though. They kind of, instead of trying to take the journey of going to places where artistically things will be revealed to them, they kind of rely on the director a bit too much, I think, at times.
Well, that's part of the cult of the director that has evolved, I think, that is damaging.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, because it stifles the creativity on the part of the playwright sometimes, and certainly on the part of the actor. Again, if they get into that. Devastating.
We have a large group of audience here that would like to ask some questions, so we're going to start right now. Would you come up and give us your name and who
My
the
name is
questions
Mohammed, and I have a question for the directors in the panel, Ms. Fitzgerald and Mr. Zollo. Have you ever seen a production of a play that you had originally directed that was done by someone else? And did they do anything differently that hadn't occurred to you?
It seemed to me that they did, that they'd made changes. And I don't remember ever particularly liking the changes that they made. I have to be honest.
No, I had the displeasure of seeing talk radio made into a movie
Is that? That's all I'm saying.
And,
Have you seen the movie?
all right,
It's an Oliver Stone film.
I see. All right, that
It's in
answers-
videotape.
I guess.
Thank you. My name is Joan Goldberg, and I have a question for Wayne Cilento. How many casting calls did you have to take before you found the entire cast? And generally, what's the average number of calls that you have to do for a play?
We went through a lot of calls. We saw a lot of people. Just our open call alone was like 450 people. And then we did, like, I would say 3 weeks of equity calls and principal calls and agent calls and stuff with hundreds. I had hundreds in the room. So we went through like thousands of
What were
people.
the qualifications that were sent out that you were needed for your dancers?
I think everyone today has to be able to sing, dance, and act. I don't think you can just be a dancer or just be a singer or an actor. The actors have to move and sing. The dancers have to act and speak. So we're looking for well-rounded performers at this point. So it's more difficult today.
How different was this than chorus line? Just as a matter of interest.
Well, chorus line just came from...
No, in the casting of it and bringing in the dancers.
I don't know how much Michael, how many people Michael saw. I mean, I know that I did the taping sessions. So we did 34 hours of taping sessions, and we basically gave up our life and gave everything out on these tapes. And when I had to go audition, I had to read something that I had said on tape. And I said to him, I'm not reading this. I told you this story. He said, just read the paper, would you please? He made it a monologue. I said, I can't read this. He said, well, then put down the paper and tell me the story again. So I think we were auditioning for our own life, and I was one of the lucky ones that got my own story. And there were a lot of people that didn't get the job, and they were auditioning for themselves. So I don't know how many people he went through, but I'm sure he went through a handful, maybe not as many as what we did for Tommy or what people do for other shows.
Thank you.
It's a process, believe me.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dennis Fury. My question is for Joanne Nici. Do you and your agency also work with playwrights and directors? And how long do you work with a client before you look for results? Does your interest and enthusiasm drop if a client doesn't work frequently or immediately?
You're talking about playwrights and directors now, particularly?
Whatever.
I think, I don't think that there's a ceiling or an artificial deadline that you can put on whether or not a client is working for you or you feel it isn't happening. I think if you find somebody that you think is talented and you believe in their work, you should be willing and ready to put in the years. And even if it doesn't come to financial success or fame for that particular client soon enough, and you end up parting ways, it may not mean that you are somehow convinced that your original convictions were wrong. It might not have been the right combination, or the artist may feel he's better represented somewhere else. But that's a tough one to call. You invest years of your life in people who do not earn a profit for you for a very, very long time. And I think that by the time you both become successful together, all those years of struggling begin to be paid off. But no, I can't tell you it's 2 years or it's 5 years or it's 10 years.
Do you find yourself packaging shows, or like you have a playwright and a director
theater?
and put them together?
That happens. Packaging is a term that mainly you use in Hollywood circles. But it does happen in theater, and it can happen within an agency where you are inclined to show your writer's work to your best directors. That in turn can lead to suggesting clients who are performers for that particular work. But it's always up to the individual artist to hire that person. It's not a financial package, as it were, that it might be in the case of a film.
How do you get to her? How do you get to an agent? How does somebody get to you?
People send unsolicited work and pictures to agents all the time, but mainly you find your clients through recommendations from acquaintances and other colleagues in the business, and also by seeing the work performed. A lot of clients that I have acquired have been through my pursuit, because I've admired the talent of that writer or director.
If somebody's performing off Broadway someplace and you don't know them, but they
It could be in Jersey, or, you know, it could be in a showcase.
Extreme example. Very extreme example.
Or it could be in another country.
Okay.
Wherever it hits your eye.
Excuse me, just would you say to people that it is even worth their time to send in unsolicited pictures, resumes, and, let's say, scripts?
It's hard to discourage people from pursuing representation through any avenue that they have. And it's unlikely that a picture will catch my eye without some attachment to it, a recommendation or a recognition on the resume of the work. Right. That has to come. We get hundreds of pictures every day and unsolicited scripts, and you can't read them all. And so you look to other agents and people who will send you their work with recommendations.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert. My question is addressed to Mr. Pugliese. I was wondering how much do actors contribute to your work? Or how much do you, if ever, modify your work according to an actor's opinion on the character?
It depends on if there are certain areas in my work, like in a play, that I think are problematic. And luckily I've had a core group of actors that I've worked with over a long period of time. So I trust them. And whenever there's a problem, I will, in those problem areas, I'll listen to you know, whatever anybody says, really. But the problems that I'm the areas that I'm pretty secure about, I don't listen to anyone about. You know, they stay the way they are.
To pick up on that, do you actually, when you write, obviously you have a core of actors, when you were writing this, although it said it came out of your experience of people you knew, did you say, aha, this would work very well for that specific actor, so that you were writing for somebody with somebody in your head?
Not this play, but there have been plays that I have and stuff that's been done at Naked Angels where I specifically had some of the Naked Angels in mind. And actually the next play came out specifically out of one person I know who I think would be just great for it.
Thank you.
My name is Gretchen Peter. My question is for Fred Zollo. Where does a new playwright find a director?
I think the better question is, where does a new playwright find a producer? There are plenty of directors around, and there are plenty of actors, and very fine ones, but a new play desperately needs producers. But if you are blessed with a producer for your new play, or an institutional theater that wants to do it, I think that obviously there are a number of plays that are on that you can go see and say, I like the work. Except, you know, I mean, I've talked to critics about this all the time. It's like, they always say, well, it's well directed, or I didn't think it was well directed. And I always say, like, what are you referring to exactly? I mean, like, they don't know what it, in most cases, with the present company excluded, of course. Because Mr. Gill understands the architecture of things so well. But the fact of the matter is that they don't know what the director did, what the playwright did, what arguments there with an actor who refused to do something.
You're not supposed to know. You're any more than you're supposed to see the
lighting. No, but they always feel they got to throw in some sort of thing about the director, or hit a director, or say something about a director, and like, the fact of the matter is that when this guy does his work, you know what he's up to. You know it's his work. You know, you can tell that's Wayne. You know, that's Bob Fosse. That's Michael Bennett. You know, but no one knows what a director does. So it's hard to go to a play and say, gee, I really heard Aven'U Boys was good. Let me go see what Fred Zollo is about. I have this play that, you know, is going to be done at the second stage. Maybe he can direct it. It's all about sitting with a person and understanding them, and if they feel the right way about your play, then that's as important as anything.
I think that's the important thing, feeling the right way about it.
Committed to it and have a real passion for it.
I have a question for you. Do the actors find it very stressful after they leave each night? I think it would be, the preparation is incredible. I mean, to go through what they go through night after
Adrian
night.
Pasdar getting his head hit against that pole a few times.
Yeah.
So he leaves with a little bit of stress, I think. Yes, clearly they do. I mean, this play is a harsh, terrifying world that both the actors, all of us who were involved in it, who are not on the stage, and the audiences are very fearful of, and they have to take it home with them. And I know this from a lot of plays that I've done. I mean, Oleanna is a perfect example, to have to go home and then come back. When Recca Pigeon was doing it, for example, with Bill Macy, I mean, every night you had to, again, step on that stage and know it's coming, that this man's going to attack her physically.
Is Oliver Stone looking at it? for a movie?
I think Oliver Stone would be absolutely perfect. He'd have them shoot each other at the end. I think they should shoot each other at the end.
I'd like to shoot myself and having to interrupt you again and bring this to a close. We've been watching and listening to these wonderful people on the panel of the American Theatre Wing seminars on working in the theater, which are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. This is but one of the American Theatre Wing's year-round programs. Everything that we do is geared towards helping the community through the theater and educating, entertaining, and saying to people, go to the theater. It's better than ever, and it's more important than ever. I'm Isabel Stevenson. I'm president of the American Theatre Wing, and I thank you all for coming, and I would ask you to forgive me for interrupting you. It was a wonderful program, and I wish we could go on and on. Thank you.
I directed, the Hudson Guild once had a program